Hey everybody, welcome to a breaking event. Not really breaking, it's a couple days after the fact. Kind of recap of the House Foreign Affairs Committee doing their withdrawal investigation part. I think, what is it, Will? Part 3, part 4?
Yeah, something like that.
Part something.
Handful.
Yeah, part handful of having folks come in to testify about the withdrawal. And the event, I believe it was 2 days ago now.
Yes.
So that would have been the 19th of March. It was General McKenzie and General Milley. General Milley was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the time. General McKenzie was the CENTCOM Commander, talking about what mistakes were made during that process. And I've got Will Selber here with me again. He is going to tell you guys all about his thoughts on that. I unfortunately didn't get the chance to watch much of that at all, but Will took...
God bless you.
Right.
You.
And as you just said before we started recording, you took the bullet for everybody to kind of talk about what happened. You know, what were these individuals saying? Because I know many of the condemnations in the beginning, especially mentioned Milley.
Yeah.
And so I'm definitely intrigued to hear about what you heard, Will, during that process.
Well, thanks for having me on, as always. Love being here. Great show. Yeah. So before I get into my thoughts, I just want to kind of set the table a little bit, if you don't mind.
Please.
I have the utmost respect for the service that General McKenzie and retired General McKenzie and retired General Milley provided to this country. They both did 30 years in the military. I am tired for them. I am happy that they're retired. I hope that they are enjoying the fruits of their labor. And God bless their families for letting them serve for so long and at such a high level. Being the CENTCOM Commander, being the chairman, I can't imagine the stress and how difficult those jobs are. I was a squadron commander at the very lowest level, and that was a lot for me. So I have nothing but admiration for them. And I have nothing but admiration for the military and the ones who were doing the NEO. I just want to get that all out of the way. I was involved in the NEO. I wasn't there on the ground, but I was involved in it with the DIA. So my thoughts is that it became everything that's wrong with what's going on in this country in a microcosm in one little bitty thing, in one little event, right? It became a political football. And it was obvious within the first half hour or so that the GOP, and this is not because I'm a conservative, the GOP used it as a way to make political hay against the Biden administration. That doesn't mean that there's not plenty to criticize about it. Absolutely. Who thinks that the NEO was a disaster? This guy right here. I'm
there too.
Yes. I think everybody is. Only the hardest of hard partisans looks at what happened during those 2 weeks and was like, bang up job. That was amazing. Let's do that again, everybody. Right? Nobody thinks that.
Yeah.
And so there's plenty of blame to go around. But it was like, we're just going to focus of this 20-year war. We're going to just do right here, the very end of it. And that's the only way that we're really going to ask questions. And so it was directed in the way that they went about asking the questions was like, would you say that they asked both the generals, when did they order, when did they suggest, that they wanted to do the NEO? And they were both like, well, we told the administration, I'm paraphrasing here. We told the administration, or, we thought that we should do it earlier, right? But they didn't listen. This is basically the tenor. And we thought, that the State Department should have done this earlier. So it's like a lot of the greatest hits that you've heard throughout the entire time, right? Like the State Department, which is like 3,000 foreign service officers compared to the DOD, the Biden administration. That doesn't mean that the Department of State doesn't have blame here. Of course they do. But like the reason why there was a NEO, the reason why at the fundamental level was that the military strategy failed. I mean, I don't like to say that out loud, but like it is the truth. And they, in my opinion, and I encourage listeners to listen to Bill Raggio's latest episode. He makes a lot of these same points more eloquently than I do. And he really kind of digs in on what the questions they should have asked. But yeah, I think that they miss an opportunity to hold these generals accountable, these retired generals accountable for the actions and the mistakes that they made during the last time. The military has a part here. Like, we were the biggest actors in Afghanistan, and we shouldn't escape some blame here. Because if we don't do that, this is my big fear, right? If we don't do that, then we're not going to learn anything. Mm-hmm. We're not going to learn anything. And then if we do that, then in 20 years from now, when we've forgotten about this experience and I'm an old man, right? I already am, or I'm, going off to the retirement home, it's going to be, oh, look at this small little war we're going to get involved in. I wonder what will happen. You just look at what happened in Vietnam after it fell, after we excluded them from the peace talks. After it fell, what did we do? We blamed the South Vietnamese government. We said that they were corrupt. We said that they didn't fight. And then we said, but we're never going to do that again. Let's go do great power competition. It sounds familiar because it's exactly what we're doing now. And so I was disappointed in the entire event. I think that this is a chance for the first time for political leaders to just be like, we all did this and we are all to blame for this. President Biden, President Trump, President Obama, President Bush, they all did something. And let me be very clear. I made mistakes. Will Selber, I take accountability for my actions in Afghanistan. During my 4 deployments in 3.5 years, when I look back, I go, there are certain times where I painted a scenario that was too rosy. It was too rosy because I knew that that's what people wanted to hear. And it happened all the way up. I was there the last year. I was really happy at least that somebody said it out loud. Didn't the Taliban attack U.S. forces the last year? General Milley said yes. Right? Well, there were mortar attacks, indirect fire attacks. There were also surface-to-air fire attacks. There was an IED attack. There were multiple ones. Now, nobody was killed, but what does that matter? We're talking about the Doha Agreement. They're not supposed to attack U.S. forces. And so, why is that still classified? And that's a whole different story. That shouldn't be. And so I feel that that was a good point. There was moments of it, when General Milley admitted that he didn't know how many American citizens were left behind. Mm-hmm. There was a good moment when General Milley admitted that the Taliban is going after our allies and killing them. Mm-hmm. And they're killing them.
I saw that. I did see that moment. And I was I just thought, okay, we've known this. Everybody knows this. I've got it in an article right now. Human Rights Watch reported on it November of 2021. New York Times was April of 22. And then we had UNAMA reporting on it in June of 22. So yep. I thought, why are you even asking that? You just want them to say it to make them have to say it? We know this, I was kind of yes, it's good that they did say it in that environment, but it's to me.
No, this has been known. This is known. But there's still people who will, I've seen it well, it's not a systematic campaign. I'm you still don't get the Taliban, do you? You don't know how this is going to work. You don't quite get it. It's not going to be a Western style campaign. They're going to take it on their own time and place and opportunity. They'll kill some of them now and they'll wait for the rest when they're able to get everything they need out of them, and then they'll take them out. They're patient people. They're not on our time clock.
Right. And it's not a strategic, top-down effort.
Right.
It's probably their influence networks. Oh, hey, man, all us allies are pissed because these guys killed our friends, and now we're going to go make sure we get them,
Sirajun Haqqani isn't he doesn't pick up the phone and go, all right, it's a go. And all of a sudden, Jason Bourne throughout the provinces, gets the call and starts whacking people. It's not the Hollywood. But so that was good. But other than that, what did we learn? Did we learn the Leo was a disaster. They should have called it earlier. The whole idea about having so the idea was to have about 1,000 people at the embassy, right? That was going to be the security presence. post Resolute support, right? When General Miller left in June, he handed the baton over, and it was supposed to be about 1,000 or so, and that was never going to stabilize because we pulled out all the enablers. Nobody really talked about that. Nobody talked about like what that did to the ANDSF, and it's also, again, it was like all of a sudden the ANDSF just fell apart. It's not true. It was falling apart for a while, and Resolute Support knew it. They didn't want reporting that was talking about casualty rates. I was like talking about casualty rates of ANDSF was questioned. When we wrote reports saying that like there was a morale problem inside the ANDSF, our reporting was held up, and it was like a Talmudic reading of it, right? It was like, well, I mean, is this what this really means? And it was just, you're just like, I mean, there's a huge assassination campaign going on and killing Afghan Air Force pilots. You think that's not going to affect their morale?
Yeah.
And so there were all these things that there's a missed opportunity to hold people accountable and to really ask the real questions. And it's a shame. I'm not surprised by it. It's a shame, though, that this has become yet another thing, right, that we're just going to use as a bat to hit each other with.
Yeah.
And like for America's Afghan combat veterans, I hear this a lot, like coming out of 20 years of war into a country that is like so evenly divided. And it's like, can we just maybe just be honest about what happened? Because we're all to blame. We are all to blame. And I think like, nobody asked, some of the Democratic senators brought up the Doha agreement, and how bad of a thing, representatives, and that was good. But like, it was just spiking the football. And then the military basically saying Department of State, ANA, ANDSF, Biden administration, we told them, what could we do?
Yeah. I keep thinking about Stu Scheller and that video that he made. Remember the video where he said, why didn't anybody pull their rank and just throw it on the table and say? Because you have to, I wonder, were there people like that? Clearly, it sounds like retired generals, Milley and McKenzie, were not among those people. They just said, okay, like, we're going to make this happen. And then now, do you think there will ever be a time when somebody will tell us that they did that? Or do you think it even happened?
I don't know. I think that it's easy for me to say, like, they should have resigned, right? Will Selber, like, do I think they should have? Yeah, I do. It's not fair. Like, to you, like, I understand and I get it. Like, you were the last guy standing who got the bag and it fell apart, and some of that's not fair, but you signed up for the job, for the 4 stars. And like, at the end of the day, like, you're also a symbol of an institution. And as a symbol, you have to weigh that against the institution that you're representing. That's just me. Some people don't agree with that. That's fine. I get it. But I do. I think they owed it to the institutions. It worked from McChrystal. I think he's doing just fine. He wrote a couple of New York Times best-selling books and is, I think he's pretty successful in life. General Petraeus did it, right? I mean, right? I think he's doing okay. Like, I think, time will heal and the people will be like, that happened, but look at what he did. Like General Milley did when he felt that he stepped out of line with the Lafayette Square thing, right? When he came up and he said, I was wrong. I made a mistake when I went with Trump to go to the Lafayette Square, right? Wow. When there was the rioters. Mm-hmm. And he apologized. He made a video remark saying that he was wrong. I thought that was very, very admirable. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, he had this glowing Atlantic profile. There was hagiographic. I mean, it was like the Patriot, and it was like the part about Afghanistan was like 1 or 2 paragraphs, and they were like, moving right along, right? Yeah. Moving right along. It's just because it was always going to be messy, Beth. It was always going to be messy.
And you know what? That's what I said. Because so obviously this episode, by the time that I'm going to release this immediately. Okay. So you guys who are listening to this, be aware that next week is Michael DeSirio talking about some insane deployments that he was on. But then the week after that is Sean Carberry, who is an incredible journalist. And we were just talking about this, about the yeah, all of these issues. They're so it's very funny to me as I sit here and I just think about all of the voices that I've heard here.
Yeah.
Talking about the impacts that are being, I'm I hear that going in my head right now.
I wish. I mean, I wrote an article for the Bulwark that came out today, and it says President Biden should talk about Afghanistan, and like I have my frustrations with the administration, but and I don't understand like the political maneuvering. That's beyond me, but like I just think there is an opportunity here for leadership because the military won't start self-criticizing unless the president gives them the structures to do that. It creates a permission structure to be like, we need to talk about what went wrong. We need to examine it. Things didn't happen the way it should have. There was mistakes made. There's an Afghan war commission or whatever. And I want to like empower these people to look at what happened because I don't want this to happen again. And I want us to be the X, Y, and Z because Beth, in my opinion, like you can go from Afghanistan, recruiting crisis, retention crisis, like military. There was a survey that came out today, 32% of military families, 32% would recommend military service. That is, I mean, the amount of active duty service members that would recommend military service has dropped by like 15% over the last four years. That's 80% of your recruiting pool.
Yeah.
Like they know, we know because we were in the war and everybody's family members were in the war. And like, they're like, why would you do that? My mom's like, I wouldn't recommend anybody for them to serve. My wife, same thing. She's like, no. No.
I'm 100%. Yeah. And like, it's like you bring up Vietnam, we've shown we didn't learn those lessons. So it matters for recruiting for the military. It matters for making sure that in the future we're not making, and it's mistakes that, like you said, they go way back. It's kill counts. Oh, and that's how we're going to show that we did something. And like, no, I'm sorry. Or we've talked about this before, like the 6-month deployment cycle. We talked about that with Trevor, and how that did not help. And there are just so many points that if we were all honest, like you say, start with the president. And I've asked for that too. Please, Biden, like I would respect a man and vote for a man who could stand up and say, it was not okay. And because everybody else is saying it anyway. Right. And nobody else really cares. They're still, like it's Afghanistan. And I hate to say it, but like, nobody remembers. That's like a very small subset of the population 100%. That actually matters. But that population is, like Sean Van Diver says, every time I talk to him, it's a cross section of America. The people like us who care, we come from all over the political spectrum. Here is your opportunity. Unite everybody and just say, let's fix this. Let's make it better. Let's let this never happen again.
And it's a segment of the population that you're going to depend on to fight your future wars.
Yeah.
I mean, tie this to like the future fight with China, what's going on in Ukraine. You want people to do this, like you better make it right. And you better have some type of semblance of honor at the end of it. Because if you don't, there's going to be repercussions right now and in the future down the line. Like there is a I keep on saying this. I'm like, there's a generation of angry combat veterans about what happened. And that is not good for society. Just through history, right? That's not something that we usually turns out well for them, their families, right? And then their neighbors, and all the way down the line. Like so, and this isn't. I'm not trying to paint a picture of like the victimized veterans do great things, all that type of stuff. But like, I mean, it's not good for us. And nobody promised us victory. That's never promised. Nobody promised you, ticker tape parades and all that stuff. But there is an inherent promise that like you will be treated respectfully and with honor. And the way that this went down was deeply dishonorable. It wasn't intentional, but that doesn't matter. That's beside the point.
Right. And I think that's the thing is we don't need the blame to be placed. And that's one of the things Sean talked about that I told him I wanted him to come back and talk about it. in the future with some other people at the
Yeah.
beginning, like Bush. I've never really examined Bush's culpability in this because when he was the president, I was so young and I wasn't really looking at things in that way. And I wasn't involved in Afghanistan during his presidency. So, you know, it's important. We can just say, hey, mistakes have been made, but we don't have to get into let's throw the crap at you about it. It's just, you know, here, let's look and let's fix with no malice.
Yeah.
But with total healing in
Yes.
mind. And like because that's the other, you know, you talk about the impact on veterans, and I just think about all the veterans I know who served there and who were so deeply impacted. And I've talked before about the one twin that I interviewed who ended up taking his life about a year after I interviewed him, and it just has always I will never forget that man and the impact that his Afghanistan service had on him. And, you know, that's part of the reason I do what I do too, you know, is he didn't have the support when he came home that he needed to deal with what he went through when he was in Afghanistan, which wasn't getting shot at or being, you know, in firefights or, you know, surviving IED attacks. Was something very different. But this cultural, he had a lot of cultural sensitivity.
Well, the transition process is hard for a lot of them, right? So like, you know, I have 4 names that I carry on, you know, my wrists. So 4 us, you know, a Marine, a soldier, an airman, a friend, an Afghan that I lost. Like, I just want it to be that like they died for their brothers and sisters always. That's the most important thing they died for. And they died for the country, and they were killed that way. But we should also be able to say like they died and we learned from it, so we won't do this again.
Yeah.
So we can actually like heal everybody else that like came home and is like, what happened? Like, this is it, and that's all.
Yeah.
You know, there is deep anger and resentment and all that type of stuff brewing, and like like I said, I'm repeating myself, there's an opportunity to leave.
Yeah. I on my way to a gala event for the anniversary of the fallen from HKIA this past summer, I stopped at the Pennsylvania, the Shanksville Memorial to 9/11. And I'd never been before. You know, I've been to the Pentagon Memorial. I had been to Ground Zero shortly after the towers fell and saw like the makeshift memorial there. But this was my first time. And I just remember I was walking along this great flight path thing, and somebody had left their bracelet. Yeah. And I thought, oh, I've never seen anybody take their bracelet off. And it just hit me like a sack of bricks. Like, who did that and why? Because to me, it's like, they have very clearly, in the lead up to September 11th, made the connection between the service and the people they lost in Afghanistan and that event. And here we are, you know, at that time, it was 2 years later. And, you know, still no answers on really, none of that from President Biden. Like, everybody's just sweeping it under the rug or throwing political footballs at one another. Well, it's your fault. It's your fault. And like,
your guy did it. No, our guy did it.
It didn't make this better.
It doesn't make it better.
No,
it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
And so I wanted so badly. I tried to find the person. I put that picture of the bracelet all over social media, and I just wanted to be able to talk to them and say, you know, what led you to do that, and what would make it better. You know,
it's
not too late for that. Because
no, it's not too late. It's not too late. It's not too late to act with a semblance of honor, right? Yeah. It's not too late. All you have to do, and the first step's the hardest, is to say, what happened was wrong. It was wrong. It wasn't intentional. These mistakes that I made, that generations of men and women made for 20 years led to this point. And it was wrong. And for all the service members, you're not to blame for it. You didn't do anything wrong. You know, the majority overwhelming served with great honor. And we're going to try to make it right and blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's a hard thing, but it's an honorable thing. But that's leadership, right?
Right. And that means that we need to come full circle, right?
Yep.
To have those retired generals, because now you are retired and you can say that.
Right.
Say, I should have been the person to look at this more clearly because that was my job.
Yep.
Right? And is that what you were hoping to hear them say?
McKenzie took responsibility for the bombing on the ground. He's like, I'm the commander, as CENTCOM commander. I just wanted them to say what happened was wrong. Okay. And that, what happened was wrong, and the military bears responsibility for this too. Mm-hmm. It's not just the State Department. Yes, they did things wrong. It's not just President Biden. Yes, they did things wrong, the administration. It's not just Trump. It's the military too. This is the thing. We all did it, right? The military, through 10 different senior generals, right? 4 different presidents, and also the American people. Like, the whole society failed here. All of us did. All of us. So let's own it all together. And then, if you want to support the troops, this is the best thing you can do right here. Is be honest and listen, because it's pain. It's a lot of pain and anguish going on right now.
Yeah. It's the opposite of if you want to support the troops, go to the mall or something like that.
Bush. Yeah. That was a huge mistake right there.
Because then it's here you have a pass. You don't have to watch. You can just divert your attention. Do not look at the man behind the curtain. It's no, that
it's okay. I mean, yesterday I was at my VA appointment getting x-rays for my claim, and the lady was like, so where were you last? I was like, I was in Kabul towards the end of the war. It's like, is that in Iraq? I'm like, no, it's not. Nope. It's fine. It's fine. No. I just God help me.
Right?
Yeah, God help me.
At the VA, I would think that maybe, but there's no prerequisite of you have to be able to know this to interact with veterans and have rapport. No, it's when I think I might have told you this one where I was the individual I was talking about who had killed himself. I'm pretty sure I know I brought this up on the podcast. I was watching this VA thing on how to help. If you're having a friend or family member, and I watched it and I put in my thing. Someone I interviewed killed himself. Whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they came back and said, well, you should tell your friend to come to one of our groups. I'm like, no, he's dead. He can't go anywhere.
Right.
And that's the whole point is what could have, thanks for listening, VA, I'm not surprised. Kabul, Iraq. Gosh. Yeah. Well, maybe, are there any more of these
there'll be more
coming up?
There'll be more.
Maybe
I think
we can get lower level individuals who will.
Mm-hmm. I hope so. I think, maybe General Miller will, General Scotty Miller, the last Resolute Support Commander, maybe he'll testify. I have no idea if they're planning on it. Bill Raggio's been on there, Sammy Sadat. They had, obviously, a lot of the Marines that survived the Abbey Gate bombing, and the Gold Star and all that type of stuff. And what the NEO needs to be examined, needs to be prodded, and all that type of stuff. But it's just not the end; it's the entire thing, and that's the important thing. It's not just the ending was the layer on the cake that just was it had to be this way because we completely screwed the whole thing up, right? I mean, this is the way it was going to end, right? Humiliatingly and incompetence all the way around. We struck the wrong the card as retribution for the VBED, right? We put our trust in the Taliban to do security. They did. I think that the general said that they didn't actually do that. That's not right. They absolutely did. The Taliban had the outer side layer of security, the first layer of security, and then it would go out, right? So they did. I mean, you can talk to the Marines that were there. You can talk to the Afghans that were there. I mean, there's tons of testimony on this. And so, yes, those were mistakes, but, so was everything else.
Yeah.
So was everything else.
And it's just more on top of more. And, you talk about the family in the VBIT or the, they targeted the vehicle.
Right.
I actually did a follow-up on that family because they were promised, because when the New York Times did an investigative report into the drone footage used to confirm that individual was an ISIS-K member, he wasn't. He worked for a U.S. NGO, And now many of his family have been moved here because that was the DOD's thing. Well, oh yeah, we screwed up and we're going to move all your family to make them safe, because there was footage galore of these people that was left to, for in the media for Taliban people to be able to identify them. And then, anyway, they're still struggling.
I'm sure.
The US, wouldn't you know? Like that family that we said, oh yeah, you're going to get we're going to, pay you for compensation. Never got compensation payments. Couldn't get the Pentagon to tell me if that was ever going to happen. Just
sure.
They're like, yeah, we'll get you an answer. 3 weeks later, nothing.
Crickets.
Well, we'll have it by tonight. Nothing. It's like, guys, this is the thing. Like, you just keep dropping. Have you ever seen an image of like a toddler and they have like a bucket and they keep putting like their 3 balls into the bucket and then they lean over to get one more and the balls fall out?
Right.
And then they keep doing it and the balls keep falling out? That is, honest to God, that's like Afghanistan.
I would leave. There's a story from one of my senior NCOs that's applicable here, and I don't want to take up all your time, but he texted me. This is a man that I served with on my first deployment in 2008, and he texted me. He's a very good friend of mine, retired Master Sergeant, and he's like, he's a contractor. He's in Germany. I got in the car, and like I could tell that the driver was an Afghan. And I was like, hey, where are you from? He said, Afghanistan. He's like, man, I was there 3 times, blah, blah, blah. He's like, you're with the American military? He's like, yeah. He's like, I hate the American military. He's like, they promised me that I worked for them, and they promised me that I was going to get out, that I would get out, and they abandoned me. But I was able to find the Germans to help me to get out. This is like, and he's like, and like my friend's like, I'm sorry that we didn't act honorably. I mean, I just...
Yep. Oh, think about how many people... Do you remember in the beginning? We can just continue for a little bit. It's all good.
Okay.
This is important. The P1, P2, it was like, oh, you guys are all going to come to the U.S. You qualify for U.S. P1, P2. And do you remember when it was like, oh, well, Canada just agreed to take on 10,000 of you. And then it was like all these other countries start... And it's like, wait, but you qualify for a U.S. We created the U.S. thing to help you. Why are you going to another place?
Yep.
And then we show up here, and it makes me think, like, that story makes me think of the Afghan immigrant who was driving Uber in D.C. and got killed by a bunch of, I believe they were gang members, young teenage gang members, who just decided to shoot him. They put out video footage of it. He wasn't doing anything, and these 4 teens just rage down this alley, shoot him, and run back. Like, what? There's just so much. If Afghans hate us after this, I understand why.
Totally.
And that's why I'm kind of amazed when I get so many. I have not talked about this here before. I've spoken with hundreds of Afghans.
Sure.
Hundreds, easily. And I'm always getting asked, can you get me out? Can you see me? Yeah. Can you feed my family?
Yep.
Or help me pay for an apartment, where I can be safe? And I always have to say no, because I'm a single mother, like not able to do those things. And, I don't know any organizations that have the money to do those things anymore either, because that's impossible to keep up.
Yes.
And, I've only ever had one individual take issue with that. Yeah. And that person was heinous. But it was one. And I've had, do you know how many Americans I've had treat me like crap through this process? It's like probably around a dozen by this point. But
I had the same thing where I have every day, like somebody reaches out to me and I'm the one that has to be, and all of us are the ones that have to be like, I can't help you. There's nothing I can do. And like, I'm sorry. And that's it. Yeah. And it's just it's garbage. And like, and then all of a sudden you'll get people saying like, hey, like I was helping a federal government employee. She was working in an intelligence agency during the fall, and like somebody heard that I was like helping people get out, so she like reached on to me, and I was like, okay, sure. And it was during the NEO. And she is a American citizen, has worked in the intelligence community for 20 years. 20 years. And it was up to me to help her get through it and like submit people for it. And just this week, she came back up. I haven't heard from her in a year and a half. And she was like, my family's getting out. They got a phone call. I'm like, so there's a little happy note, right?
Sure, it's a happy note, but it's like, why a year and a
Right.
half, right?
Of course.
And
exactly.
That's what, like, so yeah, we just had the news, because that's why I didn't watch this hearing.
Yeah.
It was because of the news about the SIVs,
Yeah.
which, one thing that really struck me was, we've got all the Republicans who want to leave, throw blame at Biden about this, but they didn't care apparently about continuing the SIV program.
Right.
Until finally it was like a last minute, we have to do this. And
right.
Now everybody's all happy, joy, we'll add 12,000, but
not the 20.
Right. Not 20, just 12 for the 147,000 people waiting on SIVs. So now we've got 20 altogether remaining for those 147. But they're just, I don't even remember. I've lost my thread of everything.
No.
It's just so nutty.
Frustrating, maddening.
Yeah, it really is. To all of these things going on simultaneously, and then all these people still stuck. That was it. All these people still stuck in the SIV process, and still, yes, great. We've got this day of execution, but how long is it going to take for these people in P1, P2 who are still? It's always like, oh, it's okay, we're processing now. Well, no, but they've been waiting to be processed for 2.5 years at this point, if it hasn't started for them yet.
I'm sure you get them just like it's like they say that I can't bring my daughter. She's 20. She's 20. She was 20. 2 days over 21.
Right. And what is she supposed to do?
Right.
Especially if they're in Afghanistan.
Right.
Being
it's like, I can't leave her.
23-year-old woman alone? I don't think so.
Yeah. I'm like, I can't do anything.
Yep.
Nothing I can do.
All you can do is try to do a sibling visa down the road or something. Or I think it's that.
There's a family reunification. You can, when you get an LPR, I think legal permanent resident. Yeah. I try not to get involved in the legal parts of this whole thing. That's what I have experts for. But it's like dealing with the DMV, right? But on steroids.
But then you wonder, so here you are, somebody who has, like, I know you have done your best. Like, you can say all you want that, like, yes, you made mistakes. And I think that that's a really honorable thing to say and be honest about, right? But I also know that you have worked your ass off to do the right things. And you're the one who's answering those calls. And I'm the one who's answering those calls from Afghans. And I just wonder, are retired Generals Milley and McKenzie answering calls from Afghans and being accountable to them too? Like, we're being accountable and we didn't have anything to do with that fine.
Imagine if all of
trying to help in final days.
Imagine if every American commanding general officer of the Afghan war came out and said, we need to get our Afghans out. We need to get our allies out, and made that a message. Nonpartisan, just came up and said, we all think we have to get our Afghan allies out. And that needs to be a priority for the American government. It would be a powerful thing.
Yeah.
I
know behind the scenes, at least one former general is doing amazing things.
I'm sure they are.
And I wish I want to be involved in that, like bringing that to light in such a huge way. I know they're not listening, but I know that maybe some people who know that story are listening, and just this refreshes their memory that, like, please let me tell that story, because that is amazing, and it's a huge weight. There are so many huge weights. I just put an article out that's totally a non sequitur to anything I do here, but about becoming a single mom and the weight that was.
Sure.
But, thinking about all these weights that all of us are carrying simultaneously, because I became a single mother as all of these people in the community of evacuation personnel were dealing with big life changes that, my activity didn't have anything to do with my involvement in Afghanistan, but so many people lost things because of their involvement in Afghanistan.
Of course.
And it's just, there's so much loss. And then you see people stand up and get political, and it's just maddening, because that's not fair. that
Come
other
at
people
me.
carry
Come at
that
me
weight.
if you think. Come at me if you think that I'm just being like a Biden hater or a Trump hater. I don't care if you want to make America great again, or if you're a part of the resistance, or somewhere in between, or you don't care. I really don't care. That is a conversation we can have outside about something else. Right here, let us be honest and let us put this aside and let us just be like, we all did this. We all did it. And so let us put it aside. That is a plea that I have heard, and like I think it is the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
I'm
doesn't mean
with
it's going to
you.
happen, but
No, we all have to save face,
yeah,
right? We have
yeah.
to, and it's like, no, it's past the time. I can't wait. As soon as we're off here, I'm going to go read your article in the Bulwark
Oh,
because,
God bless you.
like I said, I've been pumping that, line
I
for
hear
a
you.
long time that like Biden can make a huge difference here and
Yep.
win points and
Yeah.
say, because it's, there's strength in being able to stand up and say, I messed up.
Yep.
And so did
You
other
shouldn't
people.
bury reports on a federal holiday weekend, on the 4th of July weekend, and push it out on the Friday of a 4-day weekend when nobody's going to read it. Come on, man. Like, we
It
see
was
that. We're not dumb. Like,
right.
we
And
see
every
that.
time when he would say like, well, it's the holidays. I'm not talking about Afghanistan. It's like, what? It's not like people are asking you about your favorite kind of underwear that you like to wear. Like they're asking you about something deathly important.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, that's not hyperbole. That is people had their interpreters who saved their lives on the line in that
Yep.
circumstance. Americans to
Yep.
serve their country. And that was the response, and it's like, it's time to say, I shouldn't have done that. That was blasé and inappropriate.
Yep.
And anyway, we could go on for forever, I'm sure. I am glad that you watched that and that now I know more about it and don't have to go watch it myself.
I did my breathing exercises during the entire
Did
thing.
you?
I did. I was
Oh.
like, I'm going to do my box breathing. I paused it and I walked to the corner over here and I was like, all right, I'm going to do 5 minutes of box breathing so I can get back so I can watch the rest of it.
Isn't that's an awesome thing about modern technology? You can
Yep.
pause the hearing.
Yep.
Pause C-SPAN. No C-SPAN, I need a break.
Yep.
For my mental health.
Yes.
Excuse me. Oh, maybe I'll have to do that a little bit, but maybe not. I think that actually you have convinced me that there's nothing new under the sun.
No.
And let's just hope that something big happens and people can have some humility.
Yes. We'll still keep on fighting the good fight.
Heck yeah. I'm all about it.
It's a good fight and it's worth having.
I agree. It is a very good fight. And yeah. Well, thank you as always, Will, for coming with the big things, the big topics,
I appreciate it.
Tough stuff. And thanks to everybody else who listened in and continues to do the big fight with us. Tasha Core, guys, and hope to see you soon.